Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the Vineyard grower expectations. Vineyard to value, bringing farm back to the automation. First, I'd like to introduce David Ogilvie, Wilson Family Farms, Silt Wine Company. David is director of production from the fourth generation farm. They grow Wilson Farms, growing wine grapes from Clarksburg in 2015. David started his own Ogilvie Mirren Vintners with his brother Phil and friend Tom Merwin. He focuses on making premium wines from Clarksburg. As farming manager, David's champions sustainability and efficiency using the latest practical ag tech. I think that's a key word, right? Practical. And then leads the farming team and manages vineyards as well as managing winemakings for his brand. David is able to follow the grape from its original planting all the way back to its beginning and to the bottling. David graduated from UC Davis in 2002 with a degree in viticulture and enology and traveled 3 continents making wine. He's eventually found himself back at UC Davis with a master brewer certificate and the UC Extension program in 2008. Upon completions, he spent some time with Anheuser-Busch. He's got quite a great background here. I can share more with you. David and his wife Anna live in Clarksburg with their 2 kids, Molly and Connor. They enjoy raising many animals, traveling, cooking. David is also singing, playing bass guitar. So that's later. I think that's what we're going to do here. We're going to play some guitar and we'll get somebody to sing, Brent, right?
Yeah, thanks for the extensive bio.
Hey, that's what you got in here. Mark DePietra from Treasury Wine Estates. Thank you for being here today. Mark's the regional maintenance and service manager for Treasury and a Southern California native with a background in inventory management and supply finance. Utilizing your skills in wine industry over the past 8 years, you've been a driver to change and they're very eager to understand and play a role in what the evaluation of farming looks like. Obviously, you're focused on how the labor force is going to change in winemaking and wine grape growing. I think that's a big focus for you, and we're going to focus on EV and autonomous vehicles going forward. And then finally, Brent Sams from Gallo Vineyards. You know, I almost want to have you do your own introduction because you hear it says you work a lot. And that's what I got out of this. So you're big into variable rate management, precision agriculture, horticulture, and biogeography. Tell me, what's biogeography?
Biology that's different across space.
Okay, that's cool. Current work involves assessing spatial variability and fruit quality as different spatial scales, variable rate management, and the yield fruit quality sensing prediction. So again, guys, thanks for your being here today, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, the life on the vineyard and how things are going. So let's key in the first talk, what are the latest technologies that you are implementing in the field and what matters most right now to you? David?
Yeah, thanks. So the big, what matters most right now is having trying to keep our cost per acre down, and that, you know, one of the biggest costs we have is labor, and so we're looking at trying to figure out how to reduce our labor costs. We have invested in a few years ago an autonomous tractor with Kingman Ag, and it's gone. We've had some hiccups, like anyone would, in the beginning stages of new technology, and they've been great partners, and we've really have something that's working really well for us. We had the thing mowing pretty much all summer long this year, and that's something it's great to see when you get out in the morning and see your vineyard block completely mowed when it wasn't mowed there yesterday. So
you use autonomy pretty extensively then.
Not extensively. We have one tractor, and we farm about 1,200 acres of wine grapes. We would be considered in the grand scheme of things in California, we're considered a small family farming operation. I'm a 4th generation farmer, and that plays a lot into how we are able to adopt this new technology and the expense of it, and we really have to keep an eye on the ROI of everything.
Yeah. Mark, I mean, tell me how it's different from when you started, and like what technologies are you putting in place now?
So yeah, when I got into this, like I said, 7-8 years ago, there really wasn't much on the forefront. We knew people were having conversations. We know there's a need, not only for labor itself, where the future of labor is going, but also how do we add value to what we're currently doing? How do we make smarter decisions faster, and then be able to react to that or be proactive for the coming seasons? But since then, it's not only just about autonomy and other forms of fuel and things like that, but it's also data management. How do we get those systems and those platforms? How do we get those systems and platforms to work together, communicate with each other? So there's a lot of layers to this onion that we're trying to peel back. As we've seen these platforms evolve, we realize we can do more, but we're still not where we want to be. But that's okay. Rome wasn't built in a day, but as the tide rolls in, we all have to rise and help each other out to get to that point.
Before you give up the mic, Mark, I mean, it sounds a lot like operational maintenance management. Like you're trying to minimize cost by controlling the things you see and are doing. Is that in line with what you're saying?
Yes, I would say the regional maintenance stuff, that's my day-to-day. I have a team to deal with all that. Really what I focus on is where are we going and how do we get there? And again, it's creating the roots or that foundation to really be able to roll that out over all of our acreage. So we probably have over 20 alternate platforms in our vineyards now across different makes and models, but how do we make those successful on their individual ranches and then be able to expand that? And then how do they work together? I mean, that's huge.
I think to build a little bit on one of those points on the data management side in particular, like we have a very big operation both on the wine side and the vineyard side, and keeping all of that sort of together and making it make sense and making it work for us. But we've gotten so good, and I'll say in the sort of broader, not just in the robotics side of ag tech, but we've gotten very good at generating data. We've not gotten that much better at sorting it, sifting it, and then doing something with it. And so there's a big piece of that, I think, that we have to really get us from where we are to where we would like to go. A lot of the stuff that I see at FIRA every year is getting that direction where, even when I started, GIS and remote sensing were still... They were there, but they weren't in everybody's job description, and they weren't in everything that we think about. Now, more and more people, and even we probably didn't have all of our boundaries drawn.
Yeah.
And so I think now that some of these autonomous technologies and things like that are coming along, it's sort of making us move into a place where you can't just thinking about, I have a contract, I need 100 tons, and that's how I'm going to get it. I need to know sort of like all the other bits around it to make this stuff work. So I think the data side of it is as important, especially as we're moving from lots of boots on the ground into fewer boots on the ground.
I think you guys are hitting on something. I mean, both. There's a lot to this. The industry's in a bit of duress now, and I think duress creates opportunity. Hard times make strong men, and like seen big downturns in the last couple of years. This first time we've seen 25% reduction in total wine grapes across the state in the last year, or total grapes. With table grapes hitting the worst, cab has gone down, whites have gone down in value, and every news article I pulled up and looking at this didn't paint a great picture for what's going forward. For you guys implementing tech, what do you feel like you're working on first? And right now, is it the easiest stuff to get you the immediate answers, or is it the big dollar questions you're going after that you're jumping on? Go ahead.
That's a great question, and we try to look at it from both sides. First and foremost, with the hits that we're taking in the marketplace, I see ourselves, Treasury Wine Estates, we're a big company, so with that, though, that gives me an opportunity to go work with companies who are hungry for business and create partnerships, because that's where it starts. If we don't have a partner, I'm not here to buy something from the guy at the corner and then never see him again, especially in this space, because of the evolution that still needs to happen. So I'm working for strong partnerships to really get in, so when that market does turn, we see some light at the end of this tunnel. We're already on the up and up and going in the right direction, so where we can do that expansion like I was talking about earlier. Obviously, everybody in the audience, tell your friends, drink wine. That helps us all too, of course. But we're looking at all the bits and pieces, because if I can shave 3 or 4 points here and 3 or 4 points there, next thing you know, I'm shaving 10%. It might not just be one function. It's what's the low-hanging fruit, what's the opportunity, how big are those pieces of pie and the effort required to do that, and then taking that data, turning that into useful information, and then making smart decisions from that.
Let me just break in real quick. Guys, if you can make sure you hold the mic really close to your mouth when you're talking, it'll help the group here hear you. Thanks.
Sorry, guys.
David, let's jump in a little bit here. Tell me, what technology you're working on. What's easiest? I mean, as a smaller family farm, I imagine you don't have the bandwidth to take on the really complex, big questions that you got to deal with on the long haul. I mean, or is it something you got a pet project with?
Yeah, we take on new technology. It's me taking on new technology, and I'm keeping track of everything, and I bandwidth is an issue. But we could look at I kind of got in deep into soil moisture probes and doing that, monitoring how much water I'm putting down and monitoring how far I'm pushing the fertilizer down. And what I found was that we did everything correctly already. And here I was spending a bunch of money on each soil moisture probe and a subscription program every year. And now I'm looking at the prices here, and man, I'd kill for those prices this year. That we're not seeing that. I'm selling grapes, and you look at the 2024 crush report, where those prices came from. I'm selling grapes those grape prices there are sometimes half of what my family was getting 30 years ago. And what is our cost per acre has doubled or even tripled from 30 years ago. So,
yeah, I pulled up some data while doing this. It said the average land price in Napa is running more than $200,000 an acre, and just per year there's $2,000 a year an acre in tax.
Yeah,
property
taxes are really hitting us hard as well, and farming in California is not easy. Our margins are small, and with 75% of farms in California are small to medium-sized farms. Those and family farms. Those are the one. That's the backbone of our industry of farming in California, and as our margins get smaller and smaller, I'm really worried about what that says to the future of our industry. So I'm looking while I am looking ahead and trying to adopt technology. I have to that soil moisture probe experiment that I did, that project that I did for 5 years, really taught me something. That I got to look at this adoption of technology. While it's super cool and we can get a lot of data, are we using that data to help make decisions? If we're not using that data to help make decisions, we have to really kind of look at what are we doing, what makes more sense. No farm wants to waste fertilizer. We're not irrigating in a way that we're going to waste fertilizer. And when I was using the soil moisture probes, I was realizing that the way my grandpa did it was working just fine. And there's a culture in these family farms where you learn how to be efficient in your cultural practices, that really we kind of want to keep that in mind as we adopt this new technology. Now, the autonomous tractor, different story. That's really helping. I'm looking at the numbers, the amount of time that I used that tractor this year, and the cost for me so far this year, the amount of hours I've used, it is costing me about $60 an hour. And you might think, well, that doesn't make any sense. You're right, it doesn't. But now I know. I have data. I can respond to that data and try to figure out ways to use that tractor more. And Kingman Ag is helping me do that. We're working on ways to do under the vine berm work, 2 implements on the tractor, one in the front, one in the rear. We're doing things that will allow us to use that tractor more often. And then once we adopt those technologies, now I can multiply that and have 2 or 3 tractors. Once you get to that adoption of more units, now the overall per acre starts dropping, and you have one person monitoring those tractors.
Brent, I mean, right here it shows like takes 3 years to get to, and you got to borrow about $75,000 to start to make about $12,000 a year. So you got quite a few years in there to get stuff done. I don't want to do that yet, but I think we were bringing up a little bit. Is it about reducing cost along the way, or is it about growing more valuable crop as you're doing it with this data? Is tech here to help you reduce that head count and labor? Is that the more important thing, or is it to get a higher value out of your field?
So yes, but I mean the way that we see it, and this is how I see a lot of the tech that's out there is, as you see in the picture, there's big chunks here that we're actively losing money here. You can't do this if you don't know something about what you're getting. So that's a map of both yield and of revenue. But there's the important lesson of, as we're talking about installation and taxes and all these kinds of things. If we can grow more on less acreage, that's just being, just bringing the effectiveness of your planted acreage is a much better way to me. And with a lot of the tech, you can make more money using tech, but you've got to make enough money to pay for the tech. So that's the to build on a little bit about what these guys are saying too is, there's like the soil moisture example. There is nice to have data and there's need to have. And so for everybody that's in the startup world, there may be people telling you that would be great to have. What you need is something that the farmer needs. Like once it's operationally necessary is where it's going to hit. I always tell people when they say, why hasn't ag tech, made more money? And I said, well, if you start thinking about making the grower more money, you will never ever have to worry about making money, because if you are providing a benefit to them, whether that's in this case, like if you're using a variable rate spreader, irrigation system, whatever it is, if you can increase it over time, you're going to pay off that loan quicker. You're going to make more per acre. That's the way that we look at all this. You have to have fewer pumps, fewer wells, fewer tractors, everything, if you can make more per acre.
This screams variation, and does that mean that in some sense you may end up having a wine with a whole bunch of green shot berries in the same batches that had a really nice set of clusters and really even vine count? And
in a lot of cases, I've got chemistry data, and there's a bunch of this data that we published in the American Journal and the Australian Journal on some of these blocks and what we found in these places. And there are differences in this single block between let's say an $8 and an $80 bottle of wine. There's some massive. The Australians showed this 20 years ago. They have a different pay structure for the way that they buy and sell grapes, but there can be huge differences. Now, in a lot of cases, this is a block in the Central Valley. We're a very large winery, so in a lot of cases, that variability, this block and two others are going to go into the same tank. So there's an aspect of it that it's got to really be worth as my boss would say, the juice has got to be worth the squeeze.
Go ahead, Mark. I would say one of the questions I'd have in here is, this is from the UCA&R's Ag Financial Report on wine grapes in the Napa Valley. These are good resources to look into. UC Davis Extension publishes all this. I'm happy to share this with you later. On this data set up here, it points to some of the costs of the tractor passes, and making tractors more effective are interesting. But I see a ton of the dollars, of that $12,000 that you're getting out in a year, I see a ton of those dollars being done in those hand movements, the thinning, the leaf pulling, the wire positioning. That's where the big burden of the cost structure looks like it goes. If you're managing cost, is this areas that you're really looking for innovation?
Yes, but I do want to touch on, you brought up labor. It's not about cutting labor, it's about supplementing the labor we can't find. That's a big piece of it. I want to emphasize that. Oh, definitely a struggle. Definitely struggle finding the help. So using the technology, like even thinking about your heat map. If I had that heat map of yield, whatever your rate is, I can't grow 12 tons to the acre. We just can't do that for the programs that we sell, so some of our higher end stuff. But what I can do is I can use that heat map, which I got from one of my third-party partners that we work with, and make smarter, more focused decisions in the field. So I'm not increasing my labor per se, I'm just focusing it more based on the outcome and yield. And I would say it's similar to this. So let's say all blocks were treated equal, then those were some of the areas that I would try to attack with more mechanical or automation or technology to reduce some of that handwork.
I mean, all of you guys face a big structure problem that this is a 15 to 30 year investment. Like once you put it in, that's the nature of what you get, right?
Yeah, I actually wanted to. So, what labor are you having a hard time finding? Is it like tractor drivers, or is it the hand labor that's going on street thinning?
So we do FLC work. So for a lot of the hand work, like leafing, pre-pruning, pruning, all of that. But I mean, even tractor drivers, truck drivers, it's across the board.
Yeah, I see on my farm FLC work. No problem at all finding labor. Absolutely none. I get people coming out requesting jobs all the time. Tractor drivers, that I could see that being an issue. Maintenance in the shop. You guys that have your own shops, having good people in the shop is really important. And from a workforce development standpoint, I work with the Center for Land-Based Learning, and at CLBO we're developing programs to help upskill our current employees to do that work in the shop. And I've got a guy who went through a program and now he's managing our whole shop, management level. And, we're going to need to upskill our current employees to do some of this ag tech stuff. And I'm excited to do that. But I, again, haven't had problems with finding labor from the FLC standpoint.
Totally, and to your point, we're doing that as well. We're upskilling existing tractor operators where we can to use technology, but we're also looking at what does the operator of the future look like, because, I don't know where it is with your workforce, but none of the people that we work are telling their kids, hey, it's okay to be a tractor driver, go work 6 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. They say we work hard so you don't have to. So what does that next generation look like? And that's where we're, no pun intended, planting those seeds now with this ag tech to say, hey, you might have an interest in agriculture, but you're also competent on a computer or a cell phone. How do we leverage those skill sets for what's coming?
Yeah, 100%. That is, ag tech is a way that we can draw kids, younger people at the high school level back into ag. Tell someone, a sophomore, junior in high school, hey, do you want to go fly this drone? Now you're becoming a farmer. Like, that is so cool. There's some excitement there that as an industry we need to really harness and have programs develop that interest, so that those, the next generation come back. Of all these family farms, the average age of a California farmer is like 58 or something. As they retire, do they have the next family member coming back behind them? My family was lucky that my brother and I came back. I don't feel that, I see more family farms, generational farms in Clarksburg, where I'm from. They don't have that. And it scares me, and there'll be more and more consolidation. And that's where we lose the backbone of California agriculture and the diversity of California agriculture that we have.
So, we had pointed out variation in this slide over here. And wine grapes are kind of unique with a lot of the tree fruit in that you start out with a crop that wants to grow variation all over the place, and then you go out there and mechanically try to make it uniform with people out there. Tell me about how you're looking at making that wine, that decision good across the board. Like, where are you looking at in the data side? It seems like data is like the place that you're really after to find money and opportunity in this technology curve. What are you doing with this tool with your workforce to get you that uniform crop that your winemakers are asking for?
So a lot of what we've done to this point with spatial variability is to try to account for it. So we've been working on different ways to sample to account for it, to where we don't have to go take, if you take a sample in that blue spot and let's say the sugar on October 1st is 25 bricks, and you go into that red spot and it's 22 bricks. Those are very different things if they show up to the winery, right? So a lot of it is trying to understand like where we should be taking samples, but then the moving, and this is, if there's anything that I can say to like the FIRA audience here, it's that in our industry, we don't have a lot of tools to address this if it's not telling people to go do something. So I don't have a ton of variable rate tools to adjust for this. They're out there, but a lot of the stuff that we do from a fertilizer perspective that you could, or water, is through the drip. So there are a couple of companies that are out there doing some of these things, but we don't have a ton of implements that are smart. I like this idea now that we've seen. The jury's still out on electric tractors. I think we're going to go there eventually. What I think is the most interesting part of electric tractors coming in is not the electricity to run the tractor. It's that electric parts and motors are much better at finesse jobs than hydraulics. So if you've got the next good, and what I want to see is a machine printer that gets 80 or 90%. It doesn't have to be exactly what a person would do, but I'd love to see a machine printer. You'll print money. If somebody can make a machine printer that will do 80 or 90% of what people can do, it would be amazing. We don't have some of those things, and there are different reasons. We're a specialty crop and a permanent crop, so it's a high value crop, but at the same time, we're a million acres in California raising sable grapes and wine grapes, and that's probably lower than it was a couple of years ago.
Brent, you're saying close the loop. Mark, I think you said that in the beginning. I want to do something with the data.
That's right. To jump on what you're saying, not just to be able to precision prune, but do it at a rate that's acceptable. Because they have precision pruners. It's going to take you 10 years to do a 5-acre block right now.
I mean, yes. And then, so autonomy does have a spot, right? You want to be able to do those jobs, those finesse jobs, without incurring that labor cost on top, because you might have to do those jobs slower or with more machines. Or
just even as you're changing your practices, moving away from herbicides, for example, that means you're going to be doing more passes of undervine work. So how do you do that? So you get the autonomous. We call it remote operated because someone's still in control. We don't have a bunch of Terminators running around.
That's cool.
But again, we have to do more passes to keep up with what we would have done with herbicide and 1 or 2 sprays a year.
How do you get it small? How do you get it on a family vineyard?
Well, one of my customers, grape customers, said, I'm learning. The more I learn about herbicides versus non-herbicides, the more I realize you're burning a whole lot more fuel when you're going through the vineyard with a berm knife, 5 times a year versus do it once with an herbicide. And he actually told me, like, no, I don't care. Like, just do the herbicide. And I had a whole bunch of customers in that block. I'd still use the berm knife. And that opens up, other sales opportunities. But yeah, we're looking ahead. We're looking at those, opportunities to market our fruit better, and that comes with, no herbicide. Organic is interesting. There's very few organic wineries out there. So if you grow your grapes organically through CCOF, that really doesn't matter to many winemakers who are buying fruit from me if their winery is not certified organic, because they can't put made with organic grapes on the label unless they process at a certified organic winery. And they're on a smaller, a lot of my customers are smaller customers, and they're not going to go through that, but they want to know that I'm not using herbicides and I'm going that direction. So we're looking for all different marketing opportunities.
And I completely am in alignment with what you're saying, because you might be saving more in fuel, but you show somebody who's been using herbicide on the same patch for 10 years and you haven't used it for 5 years and there's still no weeds there. That tells you about the quality of the dirt that's around that vine. You might be saving, or you might be spending more in fuel, but then you're also offsetting that with savings in chemical, which I can tell you from my experience, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
For sure, yeah. $80 an acre for laying down a pre-emergent nowadays. I mean, it's nuts. Yeah.
So as moderator, I'm supposed to stir the pot just a little bit. And this is a graphic that shows like that California's share of wine grapes in the U.S., grown and sold in the U.S., has shrunk every year for the last couple of years. And I was reading a Wine and Spirits magazine, and the headline of it that was the wine industry has been lazy and failed to innovate at a rapid enough pace. How do you guys respond to that? I mean, what do you guys, not that I want to get beat up behind after the end of this, but I mean, tell me how we're not being lazy and how we're changing the industry and distinguishing ourselves as a California wine grape industry. Again.
I could theorize here. So California is a huge wine industry with a lot of large wineries who depend on buyers globally. Other states really aren't that. So they're dependent on their local economies. And so while those, maybe in a downturn, other states are producing the same amount of grapes, this is again my speculation, they're producing the grapes that they can sell locally, where in California, where we have more of a global wine presence, I could see where when the global market or the U.S. market takes a hit, that's when vineyards start coming out.
And it's not just a local problem, it's a global problem.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's industry-wide. So that's a small caveat to this. But also, again, it's evolve and survive. It's an evolution of how do we advance what we're trying to do, create more value, whether that's saving money or creating value in the bottle and the glass.
I will also say I used to live in Georgia and Virginia, and that was 20 years ago, and 15 years ago, and the wines have definitely improved. I mean, I've tasted a lot of wines in other states, and over the years, they're just getting better and better and better, especially out of Texas, and of course, you got the Finger Lakes region in New York, and in parts of Virginia. They're making some fantastic wines and becoming more competitive.
Yeah, and I mean, we're the largest winery in the world, I think, but the amount of different things that I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, it's not from lack of trying. That's for sure. We're looking at every different avenue in grapes, wine, ready to drink, cocktails, all those other things. So wine's always going to be a core part of our business, but we're willing to do. We want to give what people want to drink. So we're trying to find. Like I said, it's not for a lack of trying.
Well, I mean, I think the California wine industry is critical here, and it says here that California wine industry creates 25 million tourist visits a year, produces $8.45 billion in tax revenue, has an $88 billion impact on the California economy. I mean, you guys are a serious part of what makes this state go, especially the rural part of the state. I mean, there's millions of people's lives who depend upon what you guys do every day. And I'm really excited to see you engage in what the future of this looks like. I'd love to hear more about your sponsorships. I did call on one of these guys on the stage here to pressure junior college to make sure that they entered the Farm Robotics Academy that you have heard of a little bit about here. And that university replied back, I think it was 6 hours, saying, hey, we see that our customers are on this email chain, and we know that we want our students to be servicing our community funders. These guys are all players that are making a difference to high schools and the colleges around there. So, and then the families that are sending their students to these schools. So I really applaud the idea of what you're doing to make this bigger. I want to open this up for a few questions and see what we have.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions for the panel? Okay.
I don't have a question, but I do have a couple comments, if that's okay. John Roncaroni, I was Weed Science Advisor in Napa and throughout the state for 15 years. One is that the university innovated for a long time. The new spray technology in the industry was pretty slow to pick it up until they had to. And one other comment that isn't going to be very popular here, but I got my trust with the growers by saying what needed to be said. Too many vineyard decisions are made by winemakers and not by grape growers. And that's what really kind of got us to where we are, because they know a lot about chemistry, not a lot about grapes.
Okay, thank you. Another question?
There's no comment on this side of the podium.
Okay. Another question from anybody? Okay.
I was just curious about what sort of, at Gallo, or I guess all of you, what lessons or missteps have you sort of learned from when, specifically with data management, that can allow for scalable like data collection and even being able to use sort of same framework for things that you're not looking at without having to reinvent the wheel every time you want to sort of change things down the road?
That's a really, really challenging question and thing to overcome. I can tell you, especially since, so I started at Gallo in 2012, everything was in like foldered shared drives, and then then it was OneDrive and everything on the cloud. Now it's AWS, and we all saw what can happen with that over the weekend. It's very hard. I would say that there is a lot, and one of my colleagues at Cornell, Terry Bates, always says and I live by this, the best time to start collecting data correctly is now. Like I think the Gallo battleship is kind of, it's big and hard to turn sometimes. I think we're doing a better job of that now. Some of the software's made it a little bit easier to keep up with it. But it's a really challenging piece to keep up with where things are, what you're going to use. There's also a lot of stuff being generated that, it's again, like I said, there's useful stuff and there's need to have stuff, and sorting through the things that you need. We generate a lot of data from yield monitors, soil maps, all these different kinds of tons of satellite imagery, aerial imagery, drone imagery. What is it that you need from that? Do you need to be storing 10 terabytes of image data, or do you need the number that you're going to put into your irrigation equation? Like, those are some of the things, and once you filter out, and I'm not going to say that we have the answer even right now. We're going through a process right now to try to put all those things together where everything talks to each other. Because as somebody that works with data from a modeling perspective, and years ago, one of my projects was to try to make a spatial a model quality, Cabernet quality in San Joaquin County. And very quickly I realized that, well, the data don't exist probably to do that. And the other one is, I don't know what all I'm basing this on is a fruit chemistry sample that came from these vineyards. A block on this side of the stage is they have the same soil, same climate, all that kind of stuff, but the block on this side of the stage is a VSP with a bunch of hand labor, and then you got a high wire mechanized block next to it, and you wonder, like, sometimes the fruit chemistry would be almost identical. There wouldn't be any differences. Sometimes they're super different. Sometimes the VSP is not very good. To hit on the comment a minute ago about winemakers, sometimes don't always know. You can show them chemistry, but sometimes they don't even believe that. So there's no wrong way to do it. Well, there's definitely wrong ways to do it. There's no right way to do it, but I would say, don't start collecting data without a plan for what you're going to do with it, where you're going to keep it, and how it's going to be used. Because if you do it in the inverse order, and we did do that in several different ways, that you don't, it ends up being more of a mess than you can ever deal with. So there needs to be a real process behind what you're doing.
And then to add on to that, you can't think it all the way through out of the gate. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. It's not a bad mistake. It's a learning opportunity. So just because you had one vision or one goal doesn't mean you can't pivot. But again, you just got to keep trying to take a step forward. Don't give up. Don't throw your toys on the ground, or you don't turn it back in without understanding, like, hey, we can pivot. How do we move forward? Take that data, turn it into information, and then make a smart decision to then move on from that point.
Yeah, as 2025 harvest wraps up, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. I left Gallo in 2009, and all those folders, some of those were mine. And that was the scribble you could
We deleted those.
That's good for everybody. I tell you, I really appreciate the time, and I know what the trials you guys go through every day, and I appreciate you coming here to share this with us. I think the audience here, I'd love to have you guys give a round of applause for these guys, and please come back next time.